Now that we've had a chance to be a student in a project, let's look at how we're going to begin to start our own project. The first step is to identify the standards and skills. These can be next generation science standards, Common Core standards, or 21st century skills. As we start to identify standards, we want to consider what content area will we be focusing on. Is this going to be a science unit or a history unit? And then we want to find 3 high impact content standards from each content area that I've identified to guide my unit. This helps keep me in focus. So I suggest, as a beginner, that you go ahead and pick one content area, such as history or science, and marry it with ELA, having 3 ELA standards and 3 from the content of your choice. We're also going to want to think about what are the big takeaways that students will have and remember and be able to use in future units. We call these high impact takeaways. When I work with classroom teachers, I often ask them not to recreate the wheel, but to find a unit that they've already used and adapt it to the PBL makeover or style. You have the ability to do this if you have a collaborative teacher or you've already experienced a unit, or you may choose to go ahead and start from scratch. High impact content standards are the standards that are higher on the Bloom's taxonomy. These are going to include analyze, create, debate. They're high impact, they're not just regurgitate, they shouldn't be Googleable. If they're Googleable, if I can enter the question directly into the Google, then we have an issue. As I mentioned, we want to think about what the students are going to take away from this. Are they going to take away collaboration skills, design skills? What are those things that they're going to learn and be able to use in the future? We also want to look at what are those 21st century skills that we are wanting to work with. 21st century skills are the skills of the workplace. And as you've experienced here now that we are in virtual world, they're more important than ever. These are communication, creativity, and collaboration. This is where you will want to pause and go ahead and create your high impact content standards. You can reach out to OSPI. I've added the standards for history into our day 1, whatever standards you're looking for. And I would go ahead and write down those 3 standards from the one department and then write down 3 standards from ELA. There are many essential elements within our textbook. We can look at them. So you can refer to these on page 7 of your textbook. These are the elements that make project-based learning unique and different from a traditional unit. The 8 essential elements include sustained inquiry, authenticity, student voice and choice, reflection, critique and revision, public product, and a challenging question or problem. Authenticity. It is so important to be authentic. Students know when we're not. We want to make sure that it is real world context and tasks and tools, that the students would actually be able to do this in the future, or that they could make a change for something now. You can look at a way of looking at the authentic or not is kind of a fun way. We look at it as mild, medium, or spicy. If it's mild, students are working mildly, resembles the kind of work done in the world outside of school, or it is not intended to have an effect on anything apart from an academic purpose. This is when you have students write a paper about changing the dress code, but you're never actually going to give it to the administrator and nothing's going to happen. You're just grading a paper. Medium, students are doing work that simulates what happens in the world outside of school. In a project that is somewhat authentic, students can play a role as scientists or engineers or advisors to the president who place this scenario that might happen. They're not going to actually do this. They're just coming up with a plan. Spicy is the PBL means students are doing the work that is real to them. It is authentic in their lives and it will have a direct impact on our world. This may be cleaning up a stream or creating a fair or event that people attend. It's really happening and the work they do will be seen. So what makes a project authentic? The project is a real need in the world beyond the classroom. The project focuses on a problem or an issue or topic that is relevant to students' lives. Nobody wants to think about something that they can't do or is not interesting to them. The project involves tools and tasks and processes used by adults in the real world. And often we will collaborate with real world people to make sure that we're doing things that would work well. In this case, here in this example, is a group of first graders that decided to design a zoo, and they needed to understand where the animals needed to be and how they related to each other. They were asked to design it from a aerial viewpoint, which was really difficult for students. They met with um, zoologists to talk about which animals needed to be with which animals. They talked to them about the climate and pieces, and then they talked to them about where things needed to be organized. And you can see here, they were also able to bring in their parents and show their understanding. Technology was added. Each of these squares on the screen is a video of the students explaining their individual portion, and it came together as a class. So when they scanned those little codes, we were able to hear them speak. What are some relevant phenomenons or local problems you can connect with your students in order to bring context into their learning? As we craft a driving question, I'm going to put these in the thing for you to look at separately. But a driving question needs to relate to at least one of the standards that you have selected. It needs to promote inquiry, and it cannot be something that simply can be Googled for a result. Here's another example. What can we do to preserve the pika population who live in the Columbia River Gorge? This is a driving question. This question came from a third grade science unit in which students needed to make a claim about the merit of a solution to a problem caused when the environment changes and the types of plants and animals that live there may change. In this, students were to research what was causing harm to the pika population in the Columbia River Gorge. They needed to learn how animals survive in their environment, and they needed to come up with a solution to save the pika. They created a model to show how the pika interacts with their environment, and they presented it to their community. This helps them be authentic and gives them an audience outside of their teacher. They already want to please you, or they don't want to please you. They'll work harder for their peers and their parents than they will for you. Driving questions create interest and a sense of challenge, reminding them what they're doing. It guides your planning and reframes context standards or big ideas. It captures or communicates the purpose of the project, and it initiates the focus of inquiry. Quality driving questions are engaging, open-ended, align with your curriculum standards, and cannot be answered in one simple lesson. Answerable through research, practice and collaboration, and reflection, and result in the development of sub-questions by students. I'm going to add this to our resources as well. This is the rubric, and when you put together the rubric, you can see how it helps you develop a good driving question. How can a town, city, or community design a plan, real world problem? So in our scenario, how can our class design a public presentation to help preserve the pika population that lives in the Columbia Gorge? We will practice this a couple different times, and the PBL Works website also has many driving questions to get you started and energized. Driving questions versus essential question. A driving question is intended to be the tool to engage students. It's part of the learning plan and hooked to the students. The essential questions, while provocative and intended to lead to inquiry, does not need to be the hook. A teacher may or may not use every essential question with their students, but the driving question is always used with students during the instruction throughout the project. I recommend that you post the driving question either on your virtual page or in your classroom. And those essential questions are the things below that help them answer the larger question. Let's look at a couple to see if we know what we're doing. How do balanced and unbalanced forces cause an object to move? This is an essential question and not part of the driving question. How can we create a campaign to show teens that seatbelts are important for safe driving? This is a driving question. This allows students to come up with multiple different ways to approach this. How can we protect our local native species from invasion? Species like crayfish or the Himalayan blackberry bush? This is a driving question. It gives students many avenues to answer, and there will be many essential questions that come out of this. And finally, what happens when some plants or animals are better adapted to the environment than others? This is essential but doesn't really have a big overarching theme or product attached to it. You'll want to take about 30 minutes or more to develop your driving question. I'm going to create a discussion board for us to post our driving questions and we can have each other reflect on them and provide feedback. We're going to be providing feedback. Is it engaging? Will it hook your students? Will it empower students throughout the process of inquiry as we continue to bring it back and talk about it? We are going to have some project time to look at this throughout our day. There is a charrette protocol that we will also do later where we investigate each other's pieces.